After the break, a hike in water bills leaves some businesses fuming, and a plan to get abandoned Lime bikes off the pavements.
Now the latest ITV news in London.
Tonight, anger at a huge rise in water bills. Thames Water says customers will pay a third more from April, but businesses who've been flooded ask, what are we paying for?
It's not good for our small businesses like us. We keep passing it on to the customers, but let's say enough is enough.
Also on the programme, as burglaries go up, will police hubs be enough to support communities? Lime vows to sort out e-bike parking with a £20 million plan. And Marvel's superheroes descend on Leicester Square as acting legend Harrison Ford turns Hulk. Good evening. Millions of Londoners are facing a huge hike in their water bills. Thames Water customers will see a 31% rise within weeks, a massive blow to households and businesses already struggling with the cost of living. The company, which is submerged in debt, says the money is essential to fix crumbling infrastructure. But it's angered those affected by burst pipes, road closures and pollution. Helen Keenan has the story.
Whether it's cleaning the dishes or making cups of coffee, they use a lot of water here. But trouble is brewing for this local business, with the cost of it going up.
It's not good for our small businesses like us. We keep passing it on to the customers, but let's say enough is enough.
What are you worried about for your business?
Carrying on. We've been here a long time. This is the hardest times we've come across. Why do they want to put their prices up? They should fix their leaks, save the water that way.
They were among several businesses in Islington affected by flooding recently from a burst Thames water main. Some even had to barricade their doors. And now their concern is the cost of water.
Yeah, I'm worried. Already we have too much bill, electric bill too high. Saving money, he's gone. Before we saving a little bit, he's gone. So I have lot of problem.
Bills are set to increase by 31% a year. That's an extra £151 a year for an average household, or £12.50 a month. But that could be as much as £19 a month for unmetered properties, according to letters sent to customers by Thames Water.
Knowing that things are going to get more expensive is obviously very stressful.
I think it's absolutely shocking. It's criminal that they've been loading those companies with debt over so many decades, and now interest rates have gone up. They say they're broke. They're just trying to load it all back onto us.
I think it depends if you're getting good service, right? And I think often, we've heard it in the news really over the past few years of how poor the service has been for so many people.
The increase comes amid significant scrutiny over the levels of payouts, alongside rising customer bills and concerns over leaks, as well as the amount of sewage in the water.
The impact on the state of our rivers is that they're declining. The River Thames here is full of sewage. We can see live data that shows there have been spillages above and below this point on the river in the last 48 hours. Huge amounts of water is wasted every day through leaks and pipes, and the infrastructure isn't strong enough and up to the standard it needs to be. And so we see incidents where water mains burst. That has an impact on the local community. Local businesses can't operate.
Thames Water told us that they will invest in the network and infrastructure over the next 5 years, and said they'll use the extra funding to address customers' priorities like safe, high-quality drinking water, fixing leaky pipes and investing in sewage treatment works to improve river health. They added that they offer comprehensive support for customers struggling to pay their bill. Millions of Londoners' water bills will rise from April, some that are already struggling with the cost of living. Helen Keenan, ITV News.
Next tonight, a solution of sorts to London's disappearing police stations. Over the past 15 years, more than 120 stations have shut down across the capital, largely due to budget cuts and staff shortages. And the fading visual presence has arguably damaged the public's confidence in the police. Today, though, the Met unveiled a plan to bring frontline policing back into local communities. But as new figures show a rise in shoplifting and mugging, will it be enough to bring back trust? Here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
Like many police stations in London, Woodford has shut up shop. The Old Nick is boarded up, empty and dilapidated. But 4 years after it closed, it's been replaced by a new style of police station known as a community hub. Unlike a traditional police station, there's no blue lamp over the door, no front desk, just an entry phone with a buzzer, and inside there are no cells. The new police office was opened by the Met Commissioner today. He's warned the Met faces drastic cuts because it hasn't got enough money. So the community hub has been paid for not by the police, but by the local council.
The important thing, though, is that the police have a base. They've got somewhere to start their day, they've got somewhere to end their day, and also the people see them in the community walking in and out of this place and being able to be responsive, I think.
The Commissioner admits the sell-off of police stations in recent years has damaged the Met's links with the public.
We've lost some of that connection to communities, and I'm determined we try and rebuild that. We're not going to be building massive police stations, but if we can, through a network of these local hubs, in there maybe 1 in 7, 1 in 8 wards in London where we're not close enough, we can make a massive difference, as we can see here today.
Why is it better than a proper police station?
Well, it's a proper police station in anything but name. We have all of the tech in there, but also what's really important is that they're on the front line in the community.
The latest crime figures show a spike in shoplifting and mugging in London. This charity shop in South Woodford has been broken into twice in recent months. The manager welcomed the new police hub.
I myself live in the area and I have seen policemen walking around my area and on bikes around the area, so I do feel there is a presence. But for those people who want to visit the police and see someone face to face at that specific moment in time, I think it's a really welcome idea to have it.
The Commissioner will reveal the size of the cuts to the Met next month. More than 1,000 jobs could go. But he said today community policing will be protected, and these cut-price cop shops could be the way forward. Simon Harris, ITV News, Woodford.
More news now, and a builder who killed a woman and dismembered her before dumping her body has been jailed for the rest of his life. Sarah Mayhew's remains were found in a park in New Addington last spring. Steve Sansom was out of prison on life licence for another murder when he killed her. His partner, Gemma Watts, who'd also admitted murder, was given a minimum of 30 years.
Contrary to your attempts to justify what you had done, there was nothing that Sarah did to deserve what happened to her. She was an innocent woman, lured to that flat to die, in order that you both could act out your bloodthirsty and wicked fantasies.
2 teenagers on a trip to London from Morocco have gone missing. 14-year-old Douay and 15-year-old Huda were last seen leaving their hostel in Tavistock Place in central London on Tuesday. They were in the capital as part of a week-long student exchange programme and are due to fly home on Saturday. Anyone who sees them is asked to call the police. And a major set of upgrades at Lambeth Bridge will begin their next phase tonight with a series of overnight closures. TfL wants to extend the bridge's life by installing better waterproofing and making the crossing safer for cyclists. The bridge will close at 9:30 p.m. and reopen at 5 o'clock each morning for the next week. Now, they are a familiar sight on our streets. Electric bikes for Londoners to hire and park at their convenience. But there have been mounting complaints about the increasing number abandoned on pavements and roads. And for people with disabilities, littered e-bikes are not just annoying, they're a serious problem. Well, today, Lime has announced it's investing £20 million on improving parking and safety. Antoine Allen has been finding out more.
Convenient parking for some, or an obstacle to others. John says Lime and other cycle hire bikes often block his guide dog's path.
We constantly create an unsafe environment. When you're blind, mobility is really challenging anyway. And the thing is, it makes you more disabled.
London is home to around 30 to 40,000 rental bikes, most are Lime bikes. Some councils have ruled that riders must park in designated docking bays, whereas others allow riders to still park along the path in a manner that shouldn't block pedestrians.
Lime bikes will say that they make riders take a picture that the bike's in a safe space. Why isn't that enough?
I mean, that's clearly a nonsense. It doesn't even work because people continue to dump bikes wherever they like, and that's the fundamental problem with Lime bikes. It's an unlicensed dumper bike scheme that has a brand on it. It creates an unsafe environment for pedestrians, for blind people, for other people with mobility needs.
Lime have unveiled a London action plan. The e-bike and e-scooter provider is committing to £20 million to enhance parking, promote cycle safety and expand their street team. Currently, when docking bays are full, bikes spill out.
In real terms, what will that £20 million look like in a place like this? How will this change?
So there's a couple of key changes that will be seen through that investment. The first is there'll be more of these types of places, right? More dedicated places for people to leave their e-bikes. And that's critical because at the moment, the number of places isn't sufficient for the amount of demand for the service. So we're investing £5 million in building more of those locations. We want to build 1,500 of those within the next 6 months.
Central London areas like Bank have overflowing bays alongside busy streets. This is an example of campaigners' biggest complaint about the cycle hire scheme. The bikes outside of the docking bay are obstacles spilling onto the path. Now I can simply go around them, but if you've got a buggy or you're vulnerable or disabled, they're potentially a dangerous hazard. Thousands of Londoners enjoy rental bikes, but the government are giving councils more power to ensure cyclist convenience isn't at the expense of pedestrian safety. Antoine Allen, ITV News.
Still to come, we speak to the young patient who's dedicated a comic to the hospital that saved her life. But first, the independent film venue under threat of closure. For decades, the Prince Charles Cinema has been a West End institution, loved equally by movie buffs, students on a budget, and even Hollywood greats like Quentin Tarantino. But the building's owner wants to raise the rent and has demanded a new clause which could leave the cinema homeless with 6 months' notice. Here's Rags Martel.
It's the feature no cinema wants. The Prince Charles, the last independent picture house in the West End, could be forced to close as its landlord is looking to double its rent.
The cinema itself is unique. I don't think there's any other cinema, not just in London or the UK, but anywhere else in the world, that is programmed in this way, that is as busy. And a huge part of that is because it is where it is, which is in Leicester Square, which is the home of cinema for the UK, and it's a draw, and we lose it at our peril, because otherwise the West End will become a very sort of desolate and barren place.
The Prince Charles is every film buff's favourite, Quentin Tarantino's go-to when he's in town.
The day that Kill Bill plays at the Prince Charles, all right, will be the day that Kill Bill truly comes home.
But the cinema's now locked in a dispute with its property developer landlord, who are now demanding a break clause in their lease and could see this cult institution close in 6 months.
I think if it's closed, there's like always going to be an empty gap in my heart.
They show so many great films here that they don't show anywhere else.
But I really think it would leave a sort of cultural gap around the area if it was to close.
Losing the culture is just slowly draining from the West End, and it will eventually just be posh hotels, maybe restaurants.
The closure of the Prince Charles Cinema has been likened to cultural vandalism, and this might be the reason why. It's one of the last places in the West End that can project film from film and not digitally.
The actor Paul Mescal shared this photo of the cinema on social media, calling it his favourite and urging people to sign a petition to save it, which got more than 100,000 signatures on its first day.
We need to put pressure on the landlord to make sure that they're doing the right things, not hiking up rents and considering the long-term future of a really, really important destination.
In a statement, the landlord, Criterion Capital, told us, "We're committed to curating a portfolio that balances community benefit with sustainable commercial arrangements, and mischaracterising our position through public campaigns hinders resolution." Film fans are still hoping for a happy ending and no need for a last picture show. Rags Martel, ITV News.
Now let's find out what's on the evening news next with Geraint.
Coming up at 6:30, investigators say there are no survivors after a mid-air collision in Washington between a military helicopter and a passenger jet. Chaotic scenes as more Israeli hostages are freed by Hamas. From Indiana Jones to the Marvel Universe, Harrison Ford talks to us about his new role. Join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Now, my guest tonight has a rare kidney condition which caused her whole body to swell up so much she gained 1.5 stone in weight. It was only when Nia Clark's dad donated his kidney that she got better. Now, to say thank you to the doctors at the Evelina London, the 12-year-old has created this comic book with all profits going to the hospital's charity. And here to talk about it is Naya, her dad Adrian, and mum Stacey and sister Eleni. Thanks very much indeed for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
Naya, this is an excellent comic. What's it about?
It's about Evelina London Children's Charity, and there is lots about the ways that they've helped me in my journey through the last 3 years.
Oh, and is that why did you want to do this?
I wanted to do this because I've always wanted to write my own book, and this is a great way for me to start and put what I have.
Something you've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
And well done, it's really good. And your dad, Adrian, you donated your kidney to Naya. How much of a relief was that to know that you were a match?
Yeah, it was incredible. Yeah, both of us were as well, which is quite rare. But yeah, it was fantastic, and able to get her back to living a normal life again.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's your involvement in the comic?
So I've been running an anthology comic Shift for a while, trying to help independent creators get out there, and we've been wanting to do a more all ages title. So we decided to do that when we were stuck in hospital for quite a long time, filled the time in the evenings, and yeah, we just wanted to try and get something a bit more fun out there to
Brilliant. Excellent. And Stacey, those days, and I don't know how exactly long, when the two of them were in hospital, you know, that must have been really hard for you.
Yeah, I think as a parent and as a wife as well, it's one of your worst fears when all that comes true. And I think actually the day of surgery, I would say, was probably the hardest day I've ever had to go through in my life so far. And knowing two of your most treasured, loved people are under anaesthetic and on the table at the same time is very, very difficult. You know what the risks are as well, but you know what the rewards can be. So it's very much trying to balance that and keep that hope that what comes afterwards is something wonderful, which it has.
That's great news. And how much of a good distraction, if you like, has this comic been for the whole family?
I think it's changed the perspective a little bit. I think it's about giving back now and raising that awareness around organ donation. And sitting to my left, I have two people that are doing incredibly well and actually living life now and able to still be healthy, active. And I think the most important thing is the teams and the consultants that have looked after us, and kind of paying a respect to that in terms of what we're able to do as a family to give back to the consultants and the renal teams that have taken such good care of my loved ones as well.
Definitely. And obviously, I presume you'd all say you'd encourage anyone to try and be a donor as well.
Yeah, it's something you don't think about, but going through the process, it supported us the whole way. It was incredible, and it's obviously helped her massively.
Definitely. And is this something that you might like to do in the future, work in comics like your dad does?
I would love to write my own book. I've always loved coming up with my own ideas, and I love English, and I love everything about books.
Yeah. And what do you think about your dad and all of that?
I think he's wonderful. He's given me the gift of life, and I've freed him now.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. Well done for you. Good luck with the sales. All of the sales going to Evelina London charity, obviously. And what a great talent. Thanks very much, Naya. Well done.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And finally, from comic book to comic heroes, Londoners were seeing red in Trafalgar Square this morning at the launch of the latest Marvel movie. Joining the film franchise for the first time at the age of 82 is Hollywood legend Harrison Ford, playing a president who transforms into the monumental Red Hulk. Harrison hopes he's done the fans proud.
You're assuming a responsibility for producing work that is of the same quality as that done in the past. And I certainly don't want to be part of a disappointment for anyone in the Marvel Universe. But we've made a film that's both entertaining and emotionally engaging.
It looks pretty good. Right, let's take a look at the weather now. Here's Holly with the details.
ITV London, weekday weather is sponsored by Octopus, the renewable energy company.
Hello there, good evening. Nice to see that sunshine for today. We started on quite a chilly note, a touch of frost in places, but those beautiful blue skies. And really, we kept them for much of the day. Just a touch of fair weather cloud bubbling up, as Emily found on her lunch break in Camden. But it certainly didn't spoil things. However, what will spoil things a bit is this weather front that's heading our way for the latter part of tonight. So a bit of a soggy start to our Friday morning. It does clear through, but in its wake, quite a bit of cloud, I think, persisting into the afternoon. But let's look at the details. There's some starry skies out there this evening. Temperatures falling away. You could see a temporary touch of frost here and there. But as the night goes on, thickening cloud, outbreaks of rain, and those numbers start to recover. But yes, it is a wet start, I think, tomorrow morning for any early commuters. Some quite lively bursts of rain in the mix. But that clears through fairly rapidly. A couple of showers follow on in behind, but turning drier for much of the day. However, we do have this legacy of cloud behind. You might see an odd bright spell into the afternoon, but I wouldn't like to make any promises. Temperatures probably similar to today's values, but just feeling a bit less pleasant. If we zoom out, we can take a look at the picture for tomorrow night. A fair bit of cloud in the mix, but if we do see some clear spells, you could see a touch of frost or a touch of fog here and there, but mostly, I think, keeping quite a bit of cloud as we head into our Saturday, and that does rather set the scene for the weekend. I think often quite grey. You might see some brightness at times. For example, on Sunday, a few sunny spells of possibility. Again, by night, this chance of a touch of frost or fog perhaps, but mostly a fairly quiet weekend in store. Take care.
Octopus Energy sponsors ITV London weekday weather.
And that's it from us. I'll be back with the latest headlines in London after news at 10. The evening news is next with Geraint. But for now, from all of us here, enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
There are no survivors after a military helicopter collided with a passenger jet which was coming into land at an airport in Washington, D.C. 3 soldiers were on board the helicopter and there were 64 people on the plane, including a group of young figure skaters returning from a competition.
Both of his parents were with him while he was competing. It's well known, Mom was always too nervous to watch him skate.
President Trump says our hearts are shattered, but blames the disaster on the policies of his predecessors.
I put safety first. Obama, Biden, and the Democrats put policy first. And they put politics at a level that nobody's ever seen.
The crash happened just 3 miles from the White House in what should be some of the most secure skies in the world. Several investigations into what went wrong have begun. Also tonight, Israel sees more hostages returned but condemns the chaos around their release in Gaza. Tony Blair leads the tributes at the funeral of the former Deputy Prime Minister, John Prescott.
I don't want a variable out there that I can't control.
You don't even know what this is.
And Harrison Ford on his entry into the Marvel Universe as a red version of the Hulk.
Whatever this is, Cap, be careful.
Parents were with him while he was competing. It's well known. Mom was always too nervous to watch him skate.
I put safety first. Obama, Biden, and the Democrats put policy first. And they put politics at a level that nobody's ever seen.
There are no survivors after a military helicopter collided with a passenger jet which was coming into land at an airport in Washington, D.C. 3 soldiers were on board the helicopter and there were 64 people on the plane, including a group of young figure skaters returning from a competition.
Both of his parents were with him while he was competing. It's well known, Mom was always too nervous to watch him skate.
President Trump says our hearts are shattered, but blames the disaster on the policies of his predecessors.
I put safety first. Obama, Biden, and the Democrats put policy first. And they put politics at a level that nobody's ever seen.
The crash happened just 3 miles from the White House in what should be some of the most secure sky in the world. Several investigations into what went wrong have begun. Also tonight, Israel sees more hostages returned, but condemns the chaos around their release in Gaza. Tony Blair leads the tributes at the funeral of the former Deputy Prime Minister John Prescott.
I don't want a variable out there that I can't control.
You don't even know what this is.
And Harrison Ford on his entry into the Marvel Universe as a red version of the Hulk.
This is the ITV Evening News with Geraint Vincent.
Good evening. President Trump has described the deaths of more than 60 people in a crash involving a passenger jet and a military helicopter as a real tragedy. It happened last night as a commercial flight came into land at Washington's Ronald Reagan Airport. There was an explosion as the two aircraft collided and the wreckage fell into the icy waters of the Potomac River. There were no survivors. An investigation has been launched into what happened, but the president speculated tonight that bad decisions and the policies of his political opponents were to blame. Well, our US correspondent Dan Rivers is at the scene in Washington. Dan, politics aside, it has been a dreadful day in America's capital.
It really has, yes. Reagan Airport has just reopened, but really this investigation is only just getting underway. This is the worst civil aviation disaster in a generation in the United States. The wreckage is being recovered from the Potomac River behind me, as very sadly are the bodies. In the last hour or so, we've heard from President Trump. I warn you that my report starts with footage of the moment of the impact caught on cameras around the airport. At 8:48 last night, flight AA5342 was on final approach. From the left, you can see the lights of an Army Black Hawk on a collision course. The fireball engulfed both aircraft, killing all aboard. This is another angle from Reagan Airport, where the plane was due to land.
Both the helicopter and the plane crashed in the river.
Air traffic control confirming what they just witnessed from their tower.
I just saw a fireball and then it was just gone.
As the emergency services scrambled, it was clear the wreckage had plunged into the freezing Potomac River. Despite an extensive search and rescue operation, only bodies were found. All this playing out not far from the US Capitol and the White House, in America's most secure airspace. This is along the route that the aircraft took on its final approach as it came into Reagan Airport. You can hear behind me the helicopters are continuing to search in this bitterly cold night, and all across the horizon now are the blue and red lights of the emergency services. At the terminal where the flight was due, the Red Cross was assisting with supplies for the long night ahead. Among those waiting for news, James Claggett, whose son Junior was on the flight, returning from Kansas.
He was coming home. He was on a hunting trip with friends. There were several of them on the plane. I don't know. I assume that whether there's any survivors or not, or I'm just praying right now.
The grim signs of tragedy all around as the airport closed down.
The flight attendants started crying and we were told to get off the plane. We got off the plane and looked out the window, and right next to us was just hundreds of emergency vehicles. We're just very lucky. I mean, we could have been the next flight in and out of here.
Amateur pilot Chuck Fazio was on a plane coming into Reagan just before the accident.
Tonight, you know, as we were coming in, I mean, it was very gusty up there, and I was a little unsettled. I mean, I share everybody's feelings right now that this is just a horrible tragedy, and my heart goes out to those poor people and their families right now.
Today, those leading the search confirmed the family's worst fears.
Despite all those efforts, we are now at a point where we are switching from a rescue operation to a recovery operation. At this point, we don't believe there are any survivors from this accident.
Mr. President, welcome.
Thank you very much.
This evening, President Trump addressed the country from the White House briefing room.
This was a dark and excruciating night in our nation's capital and in our nation's history, and a tragedy of terrible proportions. As one nation, we grieve for every precious soul that has been taken from us so suddenly.
But after a moment of reflection, he wasted no time blaming the Democrats for pursuing diversity targets among air traffic controllers.
I put safety first. Obama, Biden, and the Democrats put policy first. I think it's very important to understand that for some jobs, and not only this, but air traffic controllers, they have to be at the highest level of genius.
The wreckage of the aircraft is just visible, lying in about 8 feet of water, a stark image of a disaster, which is already the subject of a bitter political row. Dan Rivers, ITV News, Washington.
Well, the names and nationalities of all those who died on board the American Airlines aircraft will be released later by the authorities, but we know that they included a group of figure skaters who were travelling home from the US Championships in Kansas. Among them were a World Championship winning couple from Russia. Here's our correspondent Rachel Younger.
Just 16 and full of promise. Spencer Lane posted these pictures less than 24 hours ago from the National Development Camp in Kansas. His Instagram account charting how he got there only 3 years after first taking to the ice. I met so many amazing people, he wrote, as he took this snap of the plane that should have carried him home. He couldn't believe how far he'd come, and now no one can take in that he's gone.
Spencer, in the best way possible, was a crazy kid, highly talented, like incredibly talented, has not been skating that long and just rocketing to the top of the sport.
As was his Boston teammate, Gina Han, who was also on board, both of them travelling home via Washington with their mums, sharing a journey they dreamt might end at the 2030 Olympics.
Gina, just a wonderful kid, wonderful parents, great athlete, great competitor, loved by all. These kids and their parents, they're here at our facility in Norwood 6, sometimes 7 days a week. It's a close, tight bond, and I think for all of us, we have lost family.
Spencer had just written of how much he owed the coaches accompanying them. The renowned Russian duo and former world champions, husband and wife Evgenia Shishkova and Vadim Nomov. Their son Max took an earlier plane after competing at the US Championships at the same venue.
He had no reason to stay at the National Development Camp. Both of his parents were with him while he was competing. It's well known, Mom was always too nervous to watch him skate.
Now both his parents are gone. The skating community's grief summed up by a former Olympic medalist and friend.
The coaches always stood at that entrance. The skaters just flew all over the ice, doing remarkable things, inspiring all of us.
Unforgettable teenagers who dreamt of representing America but died in the skies above its capital. Rachel Younger, ITV News.
Well, with more now on what exactly happened and what might have gone wrong, our science correspondent Martin Stew is here. Martin.
Well, the first thing to say is that fatal accidents involving commercial aircraft in the US
are extremely rare. The last one was back in 2009, and where this crash happened is one of the busiest and most protected bits of airspace. To get a sense of the geography, here we can see Ronald Reagan Airport next to the Potomac River, very close to the Pentagon, the White House and Capitol building, and there are many military flights that often move between those buildings. To the south is Fort Belvoir, where the helicopter is based. And this video, taken 6 days ago from a plane leaving Ronald Reagan, which incidentally is the busiest runway in America, shows military helicopters nearby. This next bit of video gives you an alternative view from inside a Black Hawk looking back at the airport. Now, we can see that they fly very low, and you can also see they are very close to the airport. Now, we know that the plane with 64 people on board was originally heading north for the main runway. The Black Hawk helicopter, which was on a training flight with 3 fairly experienced crew on board, was heading south on a parallel route. The plane was diverted to the smaller runway known as 33, making an S-shaped turn to its right. The helicopter doesn't appear to have been aware that that put them on a collision course. After warnings from air traffic control, the helicopter pilot eventually responded, "Aircraft in sight, request visual separation." But they may well have seen the wrong plane, because just 13 seconds later, at 8:48 p.m, the two collided. The plane was travelling 140 miles per hour at the time and was 400 feet above the water. It broke into 3 pieces and alongside the helicopter fell into the Potomac. The obvious question is, how on earth could this have happened? Aircraft are fitted with what's called TCAS, Traffic Alert and Collision Avoidance Systems, which warn the pilot and tell them about evasive action they may need to take. The trouble is, when you're at that low an altitude, the system is silenced, so there's no space, because there's no space to make manoeuvres. It's worth noting as well that in America, they have slightly different air traffic control system to the UK. And according to a retired BA captain, that gives American pilots more autonomy.
Our philosophy of controlled airspace is entirely different. In UK, all traffic in controlled airspace is under direct control of the radar controller, and there's no equivalent of the American see and avoid.
Which begs the question, could the pilot see and could they have avoided contact? Now, it was dark, but the pilot had night vision goggles, visibility was good, and the plane did have its landing lights on. The trouble is, in a well-lit city with busy airspace, lights can be confusing. And what's perhaps most damning is that there had been warnings here before. In 2013, another military helicopter came within 950 feet of the plane. And just 7 months ago, a small plane nearly collided with a commercial jet. Geraint, there is much more investigation to do, and there are many questions still to answer.
OK, Martin, many thanks. Well, let's go back to Washington. Dan, this is the first major tragedy of Trump's second presidency. What did you make of his response?
Well, look, he started trying to hit this kind of tone of respect and of unity, even having a moment of silence, but very quickly descended into divisiveness and sort of blaming the Democrats' diversity policies for effectively having substandard air traffic controllers, was what he seemed to be driving at. This has been seized on by the Democrats. Chuck Schumer, the minority leader in the Senate, gave some withering assessments of Donald Trump's press conference, saying it's one thing for internet pundits to spew off conspiracy theories, another for the President of the United States to throw out idle speculation as bodies are still being recovered and families are still being notified. It just turns your stomach, he said. David Axelrod, Barack Obama's former advisor, described the press conference as despicable. One other thing was that Donald Trump actually used a profanity when criticising the Biden administration's former transport secretary. This all coming from the podium of the briefing room inside the West Wing of the White House.
Dan Rivers in Washington, thank you very much. There were chaotic scenes in Gaza today as 3 Israeli and 5 Thai hostages were released as part of the ceasefire deal with Hamas. The Israelis were led through large crowds as they were handed over to the Red Cross, and it angered Israel's government, who then delayed the release of 100 Palestinian detainees before receiving assurances that it wouldn't happen again. Here's our senior international correspondent, John Irvine.
For a time today, this young Israeli woman must have wondered if she would live to see tomorrow. Arbel Yehud's release from captivity in Khan Yunis, southern Gaza, was chaotic and unseemly. Rarely can someone surrounded by so many people have been so alone. Her walk to freedom was long and terrifying. Her family watched these scenes on television with bated breath. They willed her on. Arbel kept going, shielded and urged forward by her captors from Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Eventually, the safe hands of the Red Cross were in sight and the handover happened, but it had the look of a close-run thing. One of the Red Cross personnel then went into the crowd to try to ease the passage of a second Israeli hostage called Gadi Moses. That anyone who had just spent 482 days in grim captivity had to go through this is shocking, but he's 80 years old. The Israeli Prime Minister has called these scenes additional proof of inconceivable brutality. While 5 Thai farm workers were also released today, they weren't part of any trade-off. What's left of the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza was the scene of the release of the other Israeli hostage today. Agam Berger is the last female soldier to get out. Like her 4 colleagues released at the weekend, she was also dressed in a fake uniform. And again, Hamas went through the obscene charade of phony formalities. But soon, she could stop acting. After her siblings, she was reunited with loved ones she hasn't seen for 5 days. Her 4 army colleagues freed on Saturday. In return for the hostages, the Israelis have released 110 Palestinian prisoners, many of whom would be reunited with their relatives after they were bussed away from a jail on the West Bank this evening. The hostage and prisoner releases are happening at a faster pace than originally envisaged under the ceasefire deal. That's good news ahead of the negotiations due to start next week, the talks intended to make the ceasefire permanent. John Irvine, ITV News, Tel Aviv.
Right, there's plenty more to come on the ITV Evening News, including council taxes are going up, but services are likely to be cut as councils struggle for cash. Labour faces, past and present, gather for the funeral of John Prescott.
Right now, this is the situation with the bed.
And a special report on bed poverty. Nearly 1 million children will go to bed tonight without a proper place to sleep. We're back in a few minutes.
And I hope you enjoyed the sunshine today. Finally, some settled weather, but for how long? Join me for the national forecast later in the program.
Some employees felt unable to raise concerns about the presenter, Russell Brand. The review looked at 8 internal complaints and found a number of individuals believed that Brand would always get his way. The 49-year-old is being investigated by police over sexual assault allegations, which he has always... Welcome back. The BBC has apologised to staff after a review found that some employees felt unable to raise concerns about the presenter, Russell Brand. The review looked at 8 internal complaints and found a number of individuals believed that Brand would always get his way. The 49-year-old is being investigated by police over sexual assault allegations, which he has always denied. Well, Amy Lewis is outside the BBC's headquarters tonight. Amy, some disturbing findings then.
Yes, those most serious of allegations were made public back in November 2023, and at the time several investigations and reviews were launched. And this particular one was an internal BBC review. It looked at complaints that were made about Russell Brand during his time as a host of BBC Radio 2 and also 6 Music between 2006 and 2008. Now, it considered 8 different complaints, were considered 2 that were made when he worked at the BBC. It was also, as part of this, alleged that he urinated in a cup during his Radio 2 show. Well, today, on the conclusion of this review, the BBC has made the following statement. They said, "It is of great concern that some of these individuals felt unable to raise concern about Russell Brand's behaviour at the time, and the BBC has apologised to them as part of this review." Well, as I say, this review was launched back in 2003. At the time, several women separately accused him of rape, sexual assaults and emotional abuse. Now, there is an ongoing police investigation. Russell Brand has strenuously denied the allegations and says that all of his relationships have always been consensual.
Amy, thank you. The Bishop of Liverpool has resigned after claims were made against him of sexual assault and harassment. Reverend Dr. John Perumbalath said he had decided to retire without any admission of fault or liability. He said he did not wish allegations first reported on Channel 4 News earlier this week to become a distraction. ITV News has learned almost every county council in England plans to raise council tax by the maximum amount allowed. The vast majority are in a worse financial position now than before last autumn's budget. Data shared exclusively with us by the County Councils Network also showed that councils are more likely to make cuts to adult social care, school transport and libraries, with some warning they might need to turn off streetlights. Our deputy political editor Anushka Astana reports.
In East Sussex, the County Council is considering increasing parking charges, making staff redundant and closing day centres. Next door in Kent, youth services, school transport and the budget for roads have been hit. It's all to protect services like adult social care, but they say they're at breaking point too.
I thought last year was the worst it's ever been, but it has got worse. We are going into a social care that is not fit for purpose.
She says the rise in employers' national insurance has pushed costs up 11% in care homes across Kent, with the council only covering 4% of that.
I've had a meeting today with 100 providers who are all saying the same thing as me, and I can't see the way out.
The Chancellor put £1.3 billion extra into local government in the budget, but a survey from the County Council's network, shared exclusively with ITV News, reveals how dire things remain. 85% of county councils in England say they are in a worse position financially than before the budget. The number planning to raise council tax by the maximum 4.99% has risen from 68 to 93%. But that comes alongside a squeeze on spending, with 31% preparing severe cuts and even more targeting social care, school transport, street lighting and libraries.
So you're putting up council tax and you're reducing services. Do you see why residents in Kent might be frustrated?
Frustrate, I think, is an understatement. I actually said last year, we apologise, but because of the government's funding methodology, we're actually asking you for more money for less service.
The CCN represent 37 of the biggest councils in England, including Kent, who say government decisions have unfairly hit rural areas like theirs, but it's little comfort to residents.
Council tax going up, I think it's another stab at the lower class.
Do you feel like you can afford to pay more council tax?
Not really, no.
It's the way of the world at the moment. Everyone wants more and more and more.
I recognise the huge pressure that local authorities are under after a decade of cuts and austerity. We can't turn everything around overnight, but we did make more money available for local authorities in the budget last year.
Councils say the extra money is welcome, but that it is nowhere near enough. Anushka Astana, ITV News.
As well as your council tax, if you live in England and Wales, your water bills are going up. Water UK today confirmed a 26% annual increase on bills from the 1st of April. That's a hike of around £10 a month on average. And Royal Mail could be allowed to ditch Saturday deliveries for second-class letters under plans being put forward by Ofcom that will also see wider postal delivery targets cut. Now, the colourful life and political career of Lord John Prescott were remembered fondly today at his funeral service in his home city of Hull. The ship's steward, who went on to become Deputy Prime Minister, died in November at the age of 86. Former Prime Ministers Sir Tony Blair and Gordon Brown led the tributes, praising the extraordinary achievements of a working-class hero. And there was some laughter at the stories of that famous campaign punch, as our correspondent John Ray reports.
At Hull Minster, in the city he represented for 40 years, a funeral, uniting one last time Labour, present and past, friends and rivals, for a man who rose from ship's steward to peer of the realm, a rare life's voyage. Lamented by his party and the pipes of Alistair Campbell, former spin doctor-in-chief, the first of the day's moving tributes.
We will never see his like again. A man of the people he certainly was, in a class by himself, a one-off, one of a kind, but one of us in the best sense of the word. Unique, remarkable, extraordinary.
A working-class hero, he called him, and a sharp wit.
Think also of John Schumer when he told the Labour conference that the only Tory ever worth backing was Frankie Dettori.
A boy who left school a failure, a face he admitted formed a natural scowl, yet no one has served longer as Deputy Prime Minister. To Tony Blair, who paid homage with an eloquence its subject may or may not have envied.
Now, John would be the first to say that he and conventional English grammar had an uneasy relationship.
John Prescott's meaning, he said, was always clear.
John had the brain to make an argument and the personality to make it appealing. That personality will be forever memorialized by, of course, the punch.
Just John being John, he recalled.
Cut the crap, he said. You want me to apologize, don't you? Well, yes, John. Thank you for understanding. The answer's no. I'm not bloody well apologizing, and that's an end of it. Classic.
Lord Prescott often called himself a counsellor in the stormy political marriage between the Prime Minister and his Chancellor. Today, Blair's words earned a pat on the back from Brown in the pew just behind. He left the stage today in a hearse with accompanying limousine, both made by his famously favourite motor company, 2 Jags. The last word, as so often, to John Prescott. John Ray, ITV News.
You're watching the ITV Evening News. It's 7 o'clock. Here's what's still ahead. Do you sell items on Vinted, Amazon or eBay, and why you could be due a visit from the taxman?
You're putting the effort in yourself in your own free time, so to start getting taxed on that seems quite unfair when I'm already paying tax because I've got a full-time job.
Some early signs that the 20-mile-an-hour speed limits in Wales are working. A NASA astronaut stretches his legs on his first spacewalk since becoming stuck on the space station. From Indiana Jones to Captain America, Harrison Ford on his Marvel debut.
And I hope you enjoyed the sunshine today. Finally, some settled weather, but for how long? Join me for the national forecast later in the programme, when I'll also be joined by a 16-week-old baby owl.
First, the alarming rise in so-called bed poverty, where children are growing up in households with no bed to sleep on. A charity which has now delivered 10,000 beds to struggling families says the problem is getting worse. Extreme poverty means that they simply can't afford to replace children's beds when they break, and lots of social housing comes unfurnished. It means some children are having to sleep on towels or coats on the floor. One school in West Yorkshire told us how they now provide cushions and blankets for the affected pupils so that they can get some of the sleep that they're missing out on at home. Our North of England reporter, Amy Welch, has this special report.
Baby Luke is 11 months old and his cot is broken.
So it's just when he's on it, he's shaking that. They have to keep coming in and pushing that bolt back in to make sure that the side doesn't go completely. Come on, come in. Come on then. When he stands up, he's banged his lip there the other week, and it's the first time I've seen him bleed, and it broke my heart.
His parents are both on benefits and living in a social house in Manchester, which didn't come with any furniture.
How does it make you feel not being able to afford a cot for your little boy?
Heartbreaking. I wish I could give him everything in the world as a father, but it's embarrassing, really. It's just shameful.
What's this? Alexis was homeless when she first fell pregnant and is due a second baby next month.
When it comes to looking at cots and Moses baskets and stuff, it's just they're a lot of money. They'd have to be in our bed, but then we've got our newborn and that's just not safe at all.
So the Moses basket they've just been gifted, along with this second-hand cot for Luke, can't come soon enough.
Yeah, long sleeves.
These are all long sleeves.
It's estimated just under 1 million children are living in bed poverty. That means they're either sharing a bed, living in a bed that's broken, or even sleeping on the floor. And in the past 12 months alone, this Manchester baby bank has provided around 80 cots and Moses baskets to babies who wouldn't otherwise have a safe place to sleep.
We've had some really tragic referrals of babies being injured, falling out of Moses baskets, but we've also had referrals of children sleeping on coats or towels on the floor in their house, or sharing a bed with their parents still when they're 4 or 5 years old.
Okay, right now, this is the situation with the bed.
Destiny didn't want to show her face because she's ashamed of the mattress her two boys are having to share.
They formerly had a bunk bed. My kids' bed broke, so it's been a struggle for them to manage.
Her husband works and she's at university, but rent for their Leeds flat is £800 a month, and a bed is a luxury they just can't afford.
Beds are really expensive. If I wanted to get a bunk bed, even if it's at a charity store, I'm not going to get it less than £400 to £500, £600. Welcome.
In there?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
The bed that's in this box comes from the charity Zarak.
Today we've got 3 vans out on the road, making sure that there's about 60 brand new beds going to be there for children when they get home from school.
They've just delivered their 10,000th and have seen demand surge from 150 beds a year in 2018 to 4,000 in 2024.
We do want to end child bed poverty. This problem is getting worse. And in the last 12 months, about 1 million of those children will have experienced the harshest end called destitution. That's an outrage.
750 schools are registered with Zarak, including this one in Wakefield, where around 6,000 children don't have a bed.
Every classroom has got like a cosy reading area in the corner, and they'll just come and they'll take themselves there and they'll lay down and then they'll just have a sleep, and sometimes they can be asleep for 2-3 hours even.
It's their job to spot the signs of bed poverty.
Our school is in a very deprived area, and what we've found is some of our children, they don't have a bed at all, or when they do have a bed, it can be very old, it can be broken, they can have no mattresses, they can have no bedding. Some children are actually just sleeping on, a throw on the floor.
India's boys have been sofa surfing for the past 18 months after a personal tragedy meant she lost her job and her home.
We've been staying between family members on sofas, sharing beds, on mattresses on floors. It hasn't been great. We've had times where we didn't know whether we were actually going to sleep somewhere.
Do you think people take having a bed for granted?
Yeah, we did before we got put in the predicament we were in. We thought, a bed's a bed. But now it means a lot more than that.
The social house she was eventually offered was completely bare.
It's cool.
But today's the day they finally get a bed of their own.
It feels amazing that I've got a bed all to myself now.
And while this family have their happy ending, thousands like them are still sleeping on the floor in a cycle of bed poverty that needs to be broken.
Oh, Amy, it's just heartbreaking, this problem, isn't it? And as the charity was saying, it's getting worse. What are the factors driving that? Why?
Well, cost of living is a big factor. By the time people have paid for their bills, rent, food, nappies, a bed can actually be seen as a luxury item. And the big issue many families are facing is they wait months, even years, to get into a social house. They finally move in and there's no furniture in it, there's no carpet, there's no cooker, there's certainly no bed. Now, the charity End Furniture Poverty wants to change that. They want social landlords to be compelled to furnish at least 10% of their houses, giving people a home, not just a house. Now, 10% might not seem like a lot, but that is actually the equivalent of 400,000 homes, and that would lift an awful lot of children out of bed poverty. Now, the government wouldn't be drawn over whether that is something they're willing to consider. They are working on something known as a Child Poverty Task Force, which is due to publish its findings in the spring. So far, that includes things like free breakfast clubs, lowering debt repayment rates, and extending something known as the Household Support Fund, which helps families with the cost of essentials. But charities tell me the problem is the use of that word essential. Right now, a bed just isn't seen as essential. And until that changes, this crisis is only going to get worse.
Amy, many thanks. Right, let's get an update on what's making the news tonight. And Donald Trump has confirmed that there were no survivors after a crash between an American Airlines passenger plane and a military helicopter. At least 28 bodies have been recovered from the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. Search and recovery operations continue. 3 Israeli and 5 Thai hostages have been freed by Hamas in exchange for the release of 110 Palestinian prisoners from Israel. The swap, which was briefly delayed, is a key part of the ceasefire agreement. Next tonight, online sales platforms like eBay, Etsy and Vinted have until tomorrow to tell the tax office what many of their sellers earned last year. The demand has been called a side hustle tax by some people who use the sites. And in her first interview on these reforms, eBay's UK boss has told us that the new rules have led to confusion. Here's our consumer editor, Chris Choi, on how the changes might affect you.
Millions of people use online sites for a bit of extra income. But beware, the UK tax authorities also see this as a source of revenue. This seller often put his used clothes on digital platforms, but the tax reporting rule change has put him off.
You're putting the effort in yourself in your own free time, so to start getting like taxed on that seems quite unfair when I'm already paying tax because I've got a full-time job.
These tax reporting changes could affect anyone making more than 30 sales a year or earning £1,700 or more. And digital sales sites must report sellers' earnings from 2024 by tomorrow.
Some sellers have asked us how they can find records of how many items they've sold.
Executives at sites like eBay, Etsy and Vinted are keen to play down the impacts. In the grip of this cost of living crisis, many people have turned to selling on the side. And today, eBay's UK boss told us there's been unnecessary confusion and concern.
Isn't frankly this going to put some people off using sites like yours? Because there is now the possibility of an extra tax bill?
Yeah, there's definitely been a lot of confusion about the so-called side hustle tax. And for most people who are selling unwanted items and personal items from around their house, the tax requirements haven't changed. The only thing that has changed is the requirement for marketplaces to now provide some additional data.
Accountants say online sites may request extra information from people reaching those new tax reporting thresholds, such as national insurance numbers.
What would your top tips be as a professional?
If it's just personal items, you don't have to file a return. The second is to track your income to make sure that you're able to utilise all of the allowances that are available to you. HMRC have a great self-assessment checker, which will help you to identify whether or not you do need to file a return.
Sites like these can be great for finding what you're looking for, but they may also be increasingly useful for the tax people to find what they're looking for too. Chris Choi, ITV News.
And if you'd like to know more about these changes, Chris has answered some of your questions, which you can find on ITVX. Now, within the last hour, it's been announced that the singer and actress Marianne Faithfull has died at the age of 78.
I sit and watch as tears go by.
An It Girl of the 1960s, her hits included As Tears Go By, which was written by the Rolling Stones' Mick Jagger, who she went on to have a relationship with. She also appeared in films, including The Girl on a Motorcycle. A spokesperson for the singer said she passed away peacefully today in the company of her loving family. Now, fewer people were killed or seriously injured on roads in Wales last year after the new 20-mile-an-hour speed limit was introduced. Data also showed that the number of casualties on roads with 20 and 30-mile-an-hour limits was the lowest on record, including during the pandemic. But experts are warning not to read too much into the figures just yet. Here's our Wales reporter, Rhys Williams, on whether the controversial changes are indeed working.
Modern life is busy, and we're all in a rush. But over the past year or so, people here in Wales have been forced to slow down, and not everyone's pleased about it.
Awful. Really? Yeah, needs changing back.
Now the limit's 20, people are going 30, and when it was 30 before, they were going like 40.
You can have 20 mile an hour, do it around schools, hospitals, colleges. But what are some roads, they don't need it.
I drive a lot, I work in Method Tydfil, I've got children that go to school, and when I'm doing my school run in the morning, traffic is ridiculous.
More than 85,000 motorists have been caught breaking the new speed limit, with this road in Swansea responsible for nearly 4,000. Fines may be up, but crashes are down. Collisions on 20 and 30 mile-per-hour roads were down by more than a quarter compared to the previous year. Casualties were also down 28%. The government claims this means 100 fewer people were killed or seriously injured on the roads.
20 miles per hour, you know, it's great for road safety, especially for those, what we know to be about 100 people now, who are either alive or haven't been injured, and their families, and that's a great news story.
Safety campaigners have welcomed these figures, but this has not been a popular policy. And the new Welsh Labour Transport Secretary is promising to change hundreds, if not thousands, of roads back from 20 to 30 miles per hour. Despite these figures, you're looking to change hundreds, maybe more, roads back to 30 miles per hour. Why?
Well, because we've listened to the public, and we've acknowledged that through implementation, mistakes were made. There are a large number of roads that can revert to 30 miles an hour, which should never have been 20 miles an hour.
Changing so many signs back to 30 will cost millions. An expensive mistake or a bold step towards safer roads? That debate looks likely to rumble on. Rhys Williams, ITV News, Swansea.
A pair of astronauts who are still stuck at the International Space Station have taken a spacewalk together. Commander Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore floated out of the International Space Station almost 8 months after moving in. Their task was to fix a broken antenna and wipe the station's exterior for evidence of any microbes that might still be alive after launch. There's more still to come before Emmerdale, including we speak to Harrison Ford as he takes on a new role in Captain America at the age of 82.
Well, I don't know that I feel it's late in my career, but thanks for reminding me of my age.
And after today's sunshine comes tomorrow's rain. You join me for the full national forecast coming up in a couple of minutes with a rather special guest.
Join me and Alex after this short break. Right, time for the weather now, and Alex is on the edge of Hounslow Heath in West London. Alex, you have a special guest there to help you with the forecast.
Absolutely, Geraint. Yes, we are at Hobbledown Heath, and I am joined by, yes, a very special guest. So this is Pip. She is a 16-week-old burrowing owl. Believe it or not, she's actually fully grown, and she's also okay to be out here at the moment because they're used to being in the desert, which can get quite cold at night time, but I am reassured that she's very much a summer girl. But also the feathers here, they're just so soft, but they're also not waterproof. So Pip may not be a fan of tonight's forecast because there is actually some rain on the way. But let's not dwell on that just yet. Block your ears about that rain, by the way, Pip. Let's take a quick look at today. This is the snapshot from midday. Shows just how much of a clear day it's been across the British Isles. Plenty of sunshine. And of course, the snowdrops are out at the moment. Take a look at these lovely pictures from Gloucestershire early this afternoon. The snowdrop certainly benefiting from a bit of wintry sunshine. But as I say, as we head through the next 24 hours, we are going to see a bit of a change developing. There's a weather front up towards the northwest at the moment, and that is going to produce some overnight rain, which could turn a touch on the wintry side. Let's take a look at the forecast right now.
Visibility may be low this evening as the cold weather hits. Heinz Soups sponsors ITV National Weather.
Well, as we head through the next few days, it certainly is going to be a little up and down. As I mentioned before, there is that rain which is going to make its way southwards as we head through this evening and overnight. But let's get a quick check actually on the pressure pattern setup for the next 24 hours, and you can see the weather front I just mentioned. That is going to be coming south-southeastwards. Behind it, some dry weather pushing in, but also a fair bit of cloud as well. So cloudier conditions to come as we head into tomorrow. So let's take a closer look at the situation then for this evening. And you can see out towards the east and southeast, it is dry, it's clear. I can confirm it is pretty chilly out here at the moment, but you're going to see that weather front making its way south-southeastwards. So temperatures may recover a little as we head through the small hours, but generally speaking, it is going to be a pretty cold night with that rain making its way further south and southeast. Behind it, perhaps some drier conditions, but as I mentioned before, up over the tops of the hills as that weather front comes south, it could turn a touch on the wintry side. Let's take a look at tomorrow then, and it is going to be a damp start to the day across the southeast, with that weather front still very much around for the first few hours of Friday. But you can see behind it, it does start to dry up. If you're looking for the best spells of sunshine, it is going to be out towards the west. Elsewhere, a fair bit of cloud.
Heinz Soups sponsors ITV National Weather.
Well, Garen, I'm sure you'd agree, she has been so well behaved. Pip, you've been an absolute star. You've outshone me. There you go. Back to you.
Alex, and perfect Pip. Many thanks. And finally tonight, how Harrison Ford has gone from a galaxy far, far away to a whole new universe. The Hollywood star is appearing in the Marvel Comics film franchise for the first time in the movie Captain America: Brave New World. And now at the age of 82, he told our entertainment reporter Rishi Davda that he's no plans to retire.
Welcome to the MCU. After 7 decades in cinema, Harrison Ford has perfected autograph efficiency.
Thank you so much.
With a filmography most in Hollywood envy, he's stepping into a new world.
You don't even know what this is.
Starring in his first Marvel movie as President Thaddeus Ross, who becomes Red Hulk. The star felt the pressure of joining a franchise with so many fans.
You're assuming a responsibility for producing work that is of the same quality as that done in the past. And I certainly don't want to be part of a disappointment for anyone in the Marvel Universe.
He smiled for the cameras in Trafalgar Square this morning, but just weeks ago was evacuated from his Los Angeles home as the city was devastated by wildfires.
I have many friends that have lost their homes in Los Angeles. It is a tragedy, but the community's coming together to rebuild, and I'm hopeful that we'll make some changes that will improve our resistance to this kind of tragedy happening again.
He's maybe best known as Indiana Jones.
I'm Captain of the Millennium Falcon. Chewie here.
Or possibly as Han Solo.
The President of the United States.
In Captain America: Brave New World, which is out 2 weeks tomorrow, he may be putting down another professional marker. You are in your 80s, now entering the Marvel Cinematic Universe. How does that feel to be doing that slightly later on in your career?
Well, I don't know that I feel it's late in my career, okay. But thanks for reminding me of my age.
Most would slow down and put their feet up, but Harrison Ford has no such plans. Rishi Davda, ITV News.
And that's all for now. Julie's here with the latest at 10 from me and the Evening News team. Bye-bye.
Heinz Soups sponsors ITV National Weather.